Hey, Chris Meyer, Central Florida Sight Fishing Charters. And a popular question that I get asked, and I'm going to try to answer for you today, is what's the best rod? What rod do I recommend? Well, I do mostly saltwater flats fishing, so what I recommend for that may not be a good rod for you where you fish. But a couple of things that I like to point out, and maybe to help you select a rod for your type of fishing. So there's not one rod that's good for all kinds of fishing, because fish come in all different sizes. So this is the lightest rod I own. It's a little 5-foot rod that I use for freshwater fishing and some ultralight saltwater fishing, but it certainly isn't something I'm going to catch 50-pound tarpon on. On the other end of the spectrum, here's my big tarpon rod that I would catch fish over 100 pounds on. So they're two totally different rods. I could certainly catch small fish on this one. It's not going to be much fun. Most of us are fishing for fun, so we want to make it sporting, and we don't want to just winch in a bluegill with a big giant tarpon rod. Something that I commonly see is I like to look at people's equipment as I pass by and see what they're fishing with, and I often notice that most people are fishing with equipment and line that's far heavier than what they need for those fish. We routinely catch fish 30 pounds and up on 10-pound braid, 15-pound braided line. That absolutely no issues at all, and you're able to get those fish in a relatively short amount of time if you put a lot of pressure on them with the correct rod. So first thing you need to decide is what size fish am I going to be fishing for, and then what size lure or bait am I going to be using. If you look on fishing rods, they will tell you right here on the blank. This one says how long it is. It's a 7-foot rod, and it's made for 1 to 3 ounce lures, 15 to 30 pound test line. So I'm more interested in the lure size than what they say the line is, because a lot of that's for monofilament. We might be using braid, but this is a big, stiff, heavy rod. Some rods, this is my all-around saltwater flats fishing rod. It's a 7'6". It says it's a medium. What does that mean? It means the action is medium, so it's not too stiff, it's not too soft. But from manufacturer to manufacturer, one company's medium might be another company's medium fast, etc. Until you have that rod in your hand, it's very difficult to tell exactly what that's going to be. Some rods are pretty stiff all the way through, very soft at the tip. They're good for fighting bigger fish, but being able to cast light lures if you need be. A lot of times we cast small little light quarter-ounce shrimp at 100-pound fish, and it's easier if you have a little bit softer tip but a lot of backbone to set that hook. If I'm going to be making longer casts out in open water, I want to choose a longer rod. The longer the rod is, the more leverage I have, the easier it is to obtain distance. 7'6", even 8-foot rods are good for making really long casts. Most of my flats fishing rods are 7'6". If I'm going to be fishing around docks or other structure, I'm going to make a lot of casts low to the water. Here I have a 6.5-foot rod that I use for dock fishing. It's really stiff because I want to pull fish out from underneath docks. This one tells me it's a medium heavy, 6'6", 10 to 17 pound test line, 1/4 to 5/8 ounce. So I can still use quarter-ounce jig like I have tied on right here, but I could tie much bigger, heavier lures on there, and it's not going to overbend the rod and make it feel awkward to cast. I tied a 5/8 ounce lure on this little guy here. Really not going to cast very well, and I probably don't need something that heavy on a rod this small. So it's hard for me or anyone that doesn't fish where you fish to tell you what you need, but look at the information that you find on these rods, and if possible, you want to pick that rod up and see if you like the way that it feels in your hand, because different people prefer different kinds of actions. Here are two flats fishing rods that are both 7.5 foot tall. They look pretty similar. You can see this one is slightly bigger than the other one. This one I have 20-pound braid on, and I use it for medium-sized tarpon and large snook. It'd be overkill on most redfish, any sea trout, You know, most of the fish we're catching out on the open saltwater flats year-round. This rod's way too big. It doesn't cast light lures as easily, but it casts this big heavy lure easily, and I can really put a lot of pressure on large fish. So even though they look quite similar, this is not a rod that I would want to be casting this 1/4 ounce shrimp with all day over and over. This rod I need for big fish and putting a lot of pressure on them. This rod weighs a lot less, casts a lot easier. So pay close attention to what it tells you on the blank of your rod. Choose a rod that's the proper length for the fish you want, and get your hands on it, wave it around a little bit, see if it feels good in your hand, and then you'll want to use it a lot more, which means you'll have a lot better time when you're out fishing.